What's up guys, Ben here bringing another video today. I'm at my parents' house, so if you're wondering why. There's a fancy background, you see baby pictures of me in the background, all sorts of fun stuff. I want to do a video today and provide a little bit of an update on some of the Rostermania news, especially around OpTic, kind of walk through where the team's sort of standing right now, what we're waiting on, and then give you a couple of thoughts on my end about the team and where I think they're going to kind of stand if it does form. So let's dive in and talk about the fluidity of the situation right now. All right, so kind of where we net right now is sort of where this tweet is at. This sort of aligns with a lot of the sort of discussion going on behind the scenes. I think the big thing that folks need to note here is that, this roster, if it happens, of ARCITYS, Scum, Shotzi, and PRED, requires the buyout or the transfer of two players from two different rosters. As far as I've heard, it's not like a three-team situation, three-team trade. It's sort of two distinct transactions, but that's the way it's working for now. We'll see what happens. And I think in terms of the chance of this happening, I think the ARCITYS part is pretty likely. The PRED one, I'm personally still a little bit skeptical. I really personally haven't had anyone really tell me on the record that it's like happening. It's a lot of conjecture that there's this sort of desire of OpTic. Remains to be seen if they're actually being able to pull off the facts of this deal. Because let's be honest, PRED is a superstar. His buyout is pretty high from what I've been told, and it's going to cost OpTic a lot of money. We're talking a pretty decent six-figure amount of money to go ahead and get this guy off of that Seattle roster. And that's obviously with the fact that he's supposedly on the back end of a 1+1 deal. So there's not super a lot of leverage on the Seattle side. Like in the offseason, he's probably gone anyway, unless you sort of get him to buy into any kind of project, but it's still not going to be cheap. And on the LEG side, I'm sure it's also not cheap as well, but I think, considering their financial resources and kind of the desire to sort of do right by the players when they're in these type of situations, as we've seen in the past, as early as, as soon as even this offseason and what they did with ASIM, if Alec wants to leave and he's going to OpTic offer, I don't think they're going to hold him. So that's why I think the ARCITYS thing is definitely more in the likely chain. I'm still kind of waiting to see on the PRED thing kind of where it falls, and I think the next 24 to 48 hours is pretty critical. So let's talk about the cascading sort of effect that this has. So on the LEG side, I've heard a number of different rosters over the last 24 hours, and it seems like LEG is doing a little bit of a talent evaluation. So when you kind of hear some of these teams, like the one that you see from CDL Scrim Intel, Assault, Diamond Con, Joe Deceives, and likely Hook, I don't think they've really got an idea yet of what they want. I think once Alec moves on and they kind of know what they have in the bank, I think then we'll kind of see, is it going to be most of the academy team? Is it a mix of both? They bring in any external players? I think all of that remains to be seen, but they've got some time to figure it out. We've also got the holiday come up this weekend. They're not going to scrim next week at all. From what I'm told, most of the pro teams aren't coming back until around New Year's. So I think this one's sort of very much a TBD, but I expect it to be something between players in the amateur team, members of their existing roster, to try and fill out what their new starting lineup will look like coming into the Major 2 cycle. And I think last we got to talk about Seattle. I mean, it's a question of who's going to replace PRED if he leaves. I've heard Wardy come up in some conversations. I've heard some other sort of amateur sub players come up. That one's also kind of TBD and very much a funky situation. Again, I will dive in on that further once I feel pretty comfortable this PRED move is happening, and we'll talk about sort of the names I'm hearing. But I'm personally still skeptical, and it'd be a big miss for Seattle, who's just coming off their runners-up at Major 1. All right, I want to spend the rest of this video and talk about like this rumored OpTic team and why I think they might be better than the current squad, but areas where they may still struggle. So I think right off the bat, let's talk about, I think, sort of the systemic issue they're trying to kind of solve with this team and why I think that the new team may kind of alleviate some of those concerns. So we're taking a look at the results here from Vanguard, and this is with their past team or soon to be past team. Obviously, we'll see if these moves go through with Shotzi, Scum, Dashi, and Illy. And after the success at Major 1, this team just forming, they have not sniffed a grand final since then. And look, I get it, right? Illy had hand issues during Major 2, and they had to play a Prelude and this, that, and that. But I think for me, with this team, I think some issues have kind of surfaced since then that they have not been able to fix. And I think probably the more egregious part of it is, considering how short they came really at champs, not making it to that grand final and losing to Seattle. I think them not being able to fix it between that and Major 1 of this year where they got top 8, I think that's what making this change happen, which is just, it doesn't seem like all 4 players know what they want to play or how they want to play in both S&D and Respawn. It seems like when we talk about pace of play, spacing, kind of like wanting to hit stuff, wanting to play slower or faster, it doesn't seem like there's alignment between all the players on that. And if you can't all buy into the same system, like it's really, really difficult, if not impossible, to win at this level anymore. I think that is what's kickstarting this change. And so if you look at this team, I actually do think it alleviates some of those issues, because you move Scump to more of a flex role, second AR role. You bring in PRED, who's also going to hit routes. Shot, who's also going to hit routes. Both of them as well are really good being frontline players if they need to get entries. And that really sets up nicely for Seth behind that to really, in his final year of the CDL, of competing in Call of Duty, to be in a position where I think he can make plays without the pressure of having to be like heavy entry, heavy frontline player. And then Alec comes in, and you know what he's going to do from a main AR perspective. We'll get to kind of some of sort of my thoughts on that, but I think in general this team makes a lot more sense than their last team in terms of how they're going to play Respawn and deal with sort of the current meta of the game. I will say though, this team, if it forms, is not without potential issues, and we should definitely talk about them, because I don't think that if they put together this 4-man squad that they're going to be flawless off the bat. I think there's a couple of things they're going to need to work on. First thing for me is search and destroy. Like, you look at this team on paper in search, and yeah, Scump and Shotzi are good search players. I wouldn't say yet that PRED and ARCITYS are amazing world-class search players. You know, we've seen what Seattle searchers kind of had to deal with in S&D over the last sort of year or so since PRED has come into the league. They've been okay to not great. Alec last year with FaZe wasn't, numbers wise, wasn't that good in S&D, and their squad was decent at search, but not to the level we see now or the season prior. But I mean, speaking of Alec in Cold War, when he was on that squad, like they were doing decent in search. I think as an individual search player, that's not his best game mode. So I'm a little concerned in S&D this team may take some time to gel. So like, if this team does form, I would, you know, tell everybody to kind of pump the brakes on expecting to be like the best search team in the game, because I think that's going to take the most time. I think especially bringing in, you know, PRED and moving Scump to more of a flex role, it kind of changes sort of some of the roles that people need to play in that game mode. Who's going to run bomb, who's going to maybe pull out the sniper, who's going to be kind of the late flanker on the team, and who's going to be kind of more frontline pressure trying to generate bloods. I think they're going to need to kind of fill that out or feel that out in the system they want to play, and I don't think that's going to be an overnight thing for them. I think they'll figure it out in the spring, but I would just say, like, if we talk about Major 2, Major 3, don't expect them to be like a top 2 S&D team. I think the other thing for me that we're going to need to see off the bat with this team, if not, I think there's going to be a lot of pressure from the fans, is I like Alec. I like what he brings to the team from a leadership perspective. He's not and hasn't been like a consistent slayer for about 2-ish years now. And look, yes, I know their team, the FaZe team, is really good in Cold War, but if you go look at Alec's numbers from the year, it is kind of up and down. He was a little bit streaky, and then last year was not his best year. And then, you know, we can take a look at the stats from Major 1 of this year, but it's not pretty on the LAG squad. So I think he'll need to kind of round out a little bit more consistency on this team, which is going to be tricky because he's got hyper aggressive players in front of him. So that spacing, that timing is going to be a little bit difficult, and he's going to need to put in some work to master that. But I think compared to, say, Bruce kind of filling the same spots, I'd expect Alec to be a little bit more mobile. I don't think he's going to be as skilled in terms of 1v1 gunfights as, say, Dashy is, but I think Alec is sort of gap filling in those spots, so he's going to do a little bit of a better job. And from what I've heard, especially about, you know, where the spawns are right now post patch, where you really need to kind of anchor spawns, I think Alec's going to be very disciplined in making sure that the map isn't too hectic for his squad. So I like it from a mechanical standpoint. I just think his slaying numbers, you know, will be something to watch. Does he even get more consistency there? So that's basically it on the Rostermania piece. Now, you know, as we sort of get more clarity around the PRED move, especially, I think this may cascade to, you know, other teams. We talked about Wardy sort of earlier on in this video. Like, if he leaves, does New York pick up a Challengers player? You know, what happens there? Like, this may become sort of a 5-team kind of Rostermania. The London situation is sort of separate to all that. So we'll see what happens. I'll cover it more on my channel in the coming days, but that's sort of the update for now. Let me know in the comments what y'all think. Like, are you excited for this OpTic team? Do you like it better than their current team? Do you think it should make the move? You know, let me know what you guys think in the comments and I'll respond to a couple of y'all. I'm actually probably going to do a video later this week where I take some comments from this video, from my other 2 Rostermania videos this week, like the takeaways video and the Rostermania video I did after that, and kind of react to some of them, because I think there were some interesting thoughts and questions that people put in there. So I wanted to sort of walk through those with y'all and kind of answer a few of them. As always, guys, like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe for more, and we'll see y'all on the next one.